2014 Kia Optima front brakes. This is going to be a driveway job. So what you want to do is get yourself an Americano. Come out here, we're going to lift up the car. First I'm going to set my e-brake, and then I usually just put like a brick or a piece of wood behind the back wheels just to make sure it don't roll. When you come over here to lift it up, this is the spot I use. This is the pinch weld. You could kind of feel there's like two pieces of pinch weld. That's your reinforced spot. That's where you want to lift it. So just right here where these notches are. And then I'm going to try to get my jack stand right here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to get it off camera. It's kind of boring to watch. But so I lifted it up, and then I just put my jack stand under the frame right there. Alright, so that's up. Now it's going to be a 21mm for the wheel. I got the lug nuts off camera. After the lug nuts are off, set them aside. We're going to wheel this wheel, no pun intended, to the side. And then here's our brakes. Here's our rotor and our pads. I'm going to be doing the rotors and the pads. If you're just doing a pad slap, you could just skip ahead after the old pads are out to put them in. But I'm going to be taking the caliper bracket off and the whole rotor off. I'm getting everything new. I got my parts on Amazon. I'll link them in the description below. So what we first want to do is get these little screws out the rotor. If you're lucky, you'll be able to unscrew these with a good screwdriver. They'll be a little tight still. I'll show you something if you can't get these out with a screwdriver. Set these aside, we're going to reuse them. A lot of times the screws will be rusted in, so what you could do is run down and get yourself a mini air gun, mini air hammer. And what you do is you take this part and you just kind of unwind them yourself. You just hit the sides of the screw and lift it up and just turn it with your air gun. It's always worked for me, especially on this type of car. It should be fine. So hopefully that'll help you out if you have stuck screws. The caliper bolts are here. It's a 14mm. The bracket bolts are 17 over there. This is basically a very basic setup. So I got my 14mm. I'm gonna go ahead and get this bottom caliper bolt off. Just go ahead and get this loose, and I'm going to be setting this to the side. Okay, got this out, put it somewhere safe. We're going to need it. And then so usually I try to just be able to with the bottom one out, lift this up and then just slide out the pin on the top. But this one has a bracket holding this brake line pretty tight. It's over here. I mean, you could take the bracket off, but I'm just going to see what you usually can do is just lift this up and slide it straight backwards. But I don't want to stress the brake line too much, so I'm just going to get the caliper bolt off. It's really not that big a deal. Most people get them off anyway. So remove the top caliper bolt now. And once this is off, we'll be able to set the caliper wherever we like. Just remove this here. We'll set it to the side here. I'm gonna hang it. I have a little caliper hanger, so that's safe and out the way. I recommend you do the same. Don't let it hang by the brake line. Here's our brake pads. I'm gonna pull these out. Now notice this sensor's in the inside. The sensor on our new pads, we're gonna put it on the inside bottom. So when you go put your new one in, it'll go in like this. I'm gonna get this one out. Right there. Now I'm doing brakes because the other side was down to 1mm. So before I get comments about the brake pad material. Anyways, I'm gonna take the bracket off now. I'm doing these 17mm bolts. It's kind of a tight fit. I got my 17mm gear wrench here. Just go ahead and get them loose. If you guys like a longer wrench, what you could do is put it on here and then you kind of like hammer fist the top to make it loose. So like what I would do is I would just have it tight and then I'd kind of hammer fist the top of it and then it could bust it loose. Or if you have like a rubber mallet, you could do that. Just make sure you're holding it so it doesn't fly off. Alright, so get this out. Got my 17mm bottom bracket bolt out, and then I'll get the other one. I'll put torque specs in the description. Yeah, make sure to check the description box. A lot of times I'll put extra information or links and stuff to the parts in there. Alright, so once that is out, the bracket bolt, I'm taking the top bracket bolt out now. Got that, and I'll just take the bracket off. Now that's off, and now I'll just remove the rotor. Like I said, I'm doing rotors. So let's take a look at the new rotors. Here's my new rotor. I got it on Amazon. It's a BRIGHTEST brand. Match it up, put your other rotor on front and the back side, make sure they match up perfectly. Here's my part number. Okay, that's my part number. These were like 50 bucks each on Amazon, so it was like 100 bucks for 2 of them. My pads, while we're talking about it, are Evolution pads. These were like 35 bucks, around that. These are good pads. I remember working at the independent shops, and we would use these pads, and we rarely had a problem with these. So I recommend these Evolution pads. They come with brake hardware, and then they come with just pads. They're good. They come with a sensor on them, and you know, better than like Duralast or like Wagner brakes, in my opinion. What I do is I'll clean my rotor, because sometimes it has like packaging grease or just like some kind of weird glue they put on it to, so I don't know, they just put weird stuff on rotors sometimes. This one came pretty clean, but I'm gonna clean it anyway. I don't want no weird material getting into my pads and making them squeaky. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this cleaned. Okay, so once that's nice and clean, I'm going to put it up here. Now you got to put it in the spot where these screw holes are going to line up, because we're going to put those screws back in. If you lost the screws or broke them, you could put it on without them. It's not the end of the world, but maybe try to get yourself some next brake job or something. I mean, people argue about what these are for, but they're for like assembly lines and stuff, but I like to just put them in because it came like with them. So like I mentioned, we have a new hardware, so I'm going to put this new hardware on my brake bracket. You don't have to switch this out. You could just clean them off, just, you know, with a little brush, clean these. But since I have these new hardware, and this brand is like pretty good about making like the hardware exactly the same as the OEM, so it goes on almost pretty easy. But the top and bottom hardware are different, so the smaller one goes on top, I believe. I pulled the pin out. I'm just gonna put a little tiny bit of brake lube into this hole. These pins should be able to come out, so if yours is stuck and you can't even get it out, you need to get that out and make sure it could go back and forth a little bit. The bottom one has a little black grommet on it. All right, so once you got the new hardware in, we lube the slide pins. We're gonna put this back in. 2 17mm bolts. We're gonna put them back in. I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten them down off camera. But it's this one, and this will make sure those washers that were on them stay on them. Those are like pressure washers to help hold the torque. Again, check the description for specs and stuff. So, okay, got this 17mm and this 17mm on there and tight. And now we're gonna put our pads in. Notice the sensor, this one has a sensor, it's going on the inside, so the sensor is going to be on the inside bottom. I put a little tiny bit of brake lube on the ends of these pads so it'll slide in easier. Sometimes with new hardware and new pads, it could be kind of annoying to get it in because it's kind of a tight fit, but just be patient and get it in there. And try not to get grease or nothing on your brake pads, because that could cause noise and issues. So okay, I got that in. I'm gonna get my inside pad in. Again, the sensor on the bottom. The reason why the sensor goes on the bottom is because that's the most likely spot to wear out first. Okay, so now I'm going to take my caliper off this hook, and we got to compress this piston. I have a tool. This piston needs to be pushed in so it can fit over these new pads and new rotor. I have a tool to push that in. I will put a link to a tool in the description if you need one, but you could Google ways to do this without using a special tool. There's all kinds of ways. Just try not to mess up the piston. So I got it compressed, pushed in. Now I'm gonna slide this and put it over these pads here. All right, cool. I'll put my caliper bolts in. Make sure the brake line didn't twist. It's so tight, you probably won't get it twisted, but you never know. Just make sure your brake line is how it was, not twisted or kinked or nothing. We'll get these caliper bolts in and make them tight, and that's pretty much it, guys. You're gonna have to put your wheel back on. Again, it's 21mm, and I hope this video helped you out. Any additional information in the comments is appreciated. Be safe be safe lifting your car and lowering your car. Don't forget nothing. And make sure you tighten all these bolts. Sometimes hitting them with a paint marker after you're done just to ensure you tighten them is good. But all right, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.